The dying fleet drifted through space like wounded animals seeking shelter. 12 massive ships, each one bigger than a city, floated helplessly in the dark clouds of the void nebula. Their once beautiful crystal hulls were now cracked and bleeding a strange green light into the emptiness. Commander Zix Thera stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the horror unfold on her screens. The creatures they called Devourers were eating her ships alive. These parasites had attached themselves to the hull like giant metal ticks, boring through the crystal walls and consuming everything inside. Her people were dying, and she could do nothing to stop it. The Keltharians had been running for 3 months now. Their home planet was dead, consumed by these same monsters. Zix Thera's fleet carried the last of her people, millions of civilians, children, elders, and the genetic seeds of their entire civilization. They were plant-like beings who had never known war, never built weapons, never imagined such evil could exist in the universe. Commander. Her aide Velmiran spoke in the singing tones of their language. The bioships report critical damage. The Devourers have reached the inner gardens on 5 vessels. We estimate 12 hours before total hull failure. Zix Thera's branches drooped with despair. 12 hours. After traveling for thousands of years across space, after surviving the destruction of their world, it would end here in this cursed nebula. The irony was bitter. They had come here to hide from the Devourers, but the creatures had followed them into this maze of gas and radiation. Options? She asked, though she knew there were none left. We could attempt to break through the nebula boundary, Velmiran suggested, but our damaged ships would not survive the energy storms. Perhaps 30% would make it to clear space, and abandon the rest? Zix Thera's voice carried the horror she felt. In Keltharian culture, every life was sacred. They could not simply sacrifice thousands to save thousands. No, we do not leave our people behind. Far outside the nebula, the human exploration ship UES Defiance was conducting routine scans of the star system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge, drinking coffee from a metal cup and reviewing the day's reports. The ship was small by galactic standards, only 600 feet long and carrying 180 crew members. It was built for exploration, not war, but it carried enough weapons to defend itself from pirates and hostile wildlife. Captain, called Dr. Lisa Park from the science station. I'm picking up some strange readings from the nebula. Energy signatures I've never seen before. Morrison walked over to look at her screens. The readouts showed chaotic patterns of unknown radiation, mixed with what looked like distress signals. Any idea what's causing it? Not sure, sir. But these patterns, they look artificial. Like technology, but not from any species in our databases. And Jake, she looked up at him with concern. There's a lot of it. Whatever's in there, it's big. The captain studied the data for a long moment. The nebula was marked as dangerous on all star charts. Ships that went in rarely came out. But those signals were clearly from someone in trouble. Morrison had spent 15 years in space, and he'd learned to trust his instincts. Something was very wrong in that nebula. Tom, he called to his chief engineer. How are our shields and weapons? Tom Phillips looked up from his engineering console. All systems green, Captain. Though I should mention that nebula's full of radiation that could fry our electronics if we stay too long. Amy, any luck translating those signals? Communications officer Amy Rodriguez shook her head. Nothing in our language banks, sir. But the mathematical patterns suggest intelligence. Someone's definitely trying to call for help. Morrison set down his coffee cup and made the decision that would change everything. In the human military, there was an old rule. You never left anyone behind. It didn't matter if they were human or alien, friend or stranger. If someone was in trouble, you helped them. Plot a course into the nebula, he ordered. Best speed. Sir, his first officer Ben Carter said carefully. We don't know what we're flying into. Could be a trap. Could be, Morrison agreed. But those are distress calls, Ben, real ones. Someone's dying in there, and we're the only ship in range. He looked around at his crew. I won't have it on my conscience that we flew away from people who needed help. The Defiance changed course and headed toward the swirling clouds of the void nebula. As they approached, the strange readings grew stronger. Dr. Park worked frantically to analyze the signals while the crew prepared for whatever they might find. Inside the nebula, Commander Zix Thera felt another shudder run through her ship as the Devourers tore away another section of hull. Her people were scared, and she could feel their fear through the bio-neural connections that linked all Keltharians. The children were crying in harmonies that broke her heart. Commander, Felmarin's voice carried excitement for the first time in days. We're detecting a new ship approaching from the nebula edge. Small vessel, unknown configuration. Zixthera looked at the tactical display. A tiny dot was moving through the dangerous gas clouds, heading straight for their position. Could it be another Devourer ship? No, Commander. The energy signature is completely different, and it's transmitting on multiple frequencies as if trying to communicate. As they watched, the unknown vessel suddenly accelerated. It shot through a cloud of radioactive gas that should have killed any crew inside, then changed direction in a way that suggested incredible skill or incredible recklessness. Whoever was flying that ship didn't seem to care about danger. Are they insane? Velmiran whispered. Before Zixthera could answer, her sensors lit up with new contacts. A swarm of Devourer attack drones had detected the newcomer and were moving to intercept. The small ship was flying straight into a death trap, and there was nothing the Keltharians could do to warn them. But as the Devourers closed in, something unexpected happened. The unknown ship opened fire with crude but effective weapons, projectile cannons and explosive missiles that tore through the biomechanical drones like paper. The newcomer fought with a savage efficiency that stunned the peaceful Keltharians. By the great tree, Zixthera breathed. They're actually winning. The small ship carved through the Devourer formation, its weapons blazing. But more drones were coming, and even this skilled pilot couldn't fight them all. The vessel was brave, but it was also doomed. And yet it kept coming, kept fighting, heading straight for the dying Keltharian fleet. Someone on that ship had seen their distress calls and decided to help, even though it meant certain death. For the first time in months, Commander Zixthera felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. The Defiance shook as another wave of Devourer drones slammed into their shields. Captain Morrison gripped his command chair as sparks flew from damaged consoles around the bridge. Outside the viewports, the enemy swarmed like angry insects, their biomechanical bodies pulsing with an evil red light. Shields down to 60%, reported Tom Phillips from engineering. These things are learning our attack patterns. They're adapting faster than I've ever seen. Morrison watched the tactical display as more enemy contacts appeared on the screen. The Devourers seemed endless, pouring out of the larger ships that were attached to the alien vessels like mechanical parasites. But his crew was giving as good as they got. Human weapons, simple kinetic cannons and nuclear missiles, were proving surprisingly effective against the biomechanical monsters. Amy, any luck with those alien signals? Morrison called out as another explosion rocked the ship. Communications Officer Amy Rodriguez looked up from her console, sweat beading on her forehead. I'm getting something, Captain. Dr. Park's translator is making progress. The aliens use harmonic frequencies like singing, but I think I can convert it to audio we can understand. On the main screen, the alien fleet came into view. Morrison had seen a lot of strange things in his years exploring space, but nothing like this. 12 massive ships that looked like they were grown rather than built, their crystal hulls reflecting the nebula's eerie light. But the beautiful vessels were clearly dying. Dark patches covered their surfaces where the Devourers had attached themselves, and green fluid leaked from countless wounds. My God, whispered Dr. Park. Those ships are alive. They're biological constructs, not mechanical. And they're full of people, added Ben Carter grimly. Sensors show millions of life signs. This is their entire civilization, Captain. Morrison felt a cold anger settle in his stomach. The Devourers weren't just attacking ships, they were committing genocide. These peaceful aliens were refugees and the parasites were hunting them down like animals. Priority target is the largest Devourer ship, Morrison ordered. Full missile spread. The Defiance's nuclear warhead streaked across space and slammed into the massive biomechanical vessel. The explosion lit up the nebula like a small star, and the creature ship writhed in apparent pain before falling silent. But even as they celebrated this small victory, more Devourers emerged from the shadows. Suddenly, Amy's console came alive with sound. An alien voice, translated into English by the computer, filled the bridge with words that carried desperate hope. Unknown vessel, this is Fleet Commander Zixthera of the Keltharian Exodus Fleet. You have entered a death trap. The Devourers will consume you as they have consumed us. Why do you risk yourselves for strangers? Morrison stepped forward and nodded to Amy. Open a channel. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship Defiance. We received your distress signals and came to help. What's your situation? There was a long pause before the alien commander replied. When she spoke again, her translated voice carried amazement. You came to help? You do not even know us. We are Keltharians, the last survivors of our homeworld. The Devourers destroyed our planet and have pursued us across the galaxy. Our ships are dying and we have no weapons to fight them. How many people are we talking about? Morrison asked. 12 million souls, Zixthara replied. Children, elders, the genetic legacy of our entire species. We carry the seeds of our civilization, but we will all die here in this cursed place. Morrison looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were scared. Any sane person would be scared facing millions of hostile aliens in a radiation-filled nebula. But he also saw determination in their eyes. Humans had always been fighters, always been willing to help the underdog. Commander Zixthara, we're going to get you out of here, Morrison said firmly. All of you. The alien's response came back filled with confusion. Captain Morrison, your ship is very small. We count only 200 of your people. There are millions of Devourers. This is not possible. First Officer Ben Carter leaned close to Morrison. Captain, she's not wrong. We're outnumbered about 50,000 to 1. Our weapons are effective, but we don't have enough ammunition for a prolonged fight. Morrison nodded but didn't change his expression. Sometimes being outnumbered is an advantage, Ben. They won't expect us to attack. Dr. Park looked up from her science station with excitement. Captain, I'm analyzing the Devourer biosignatures. These creatures are essentially space parasites. They consume other species' technology and adapt it for their own use. But their adaptation has a weakness. They expect elegant, efficient responses. What do you mean? Morrison asked. Human technology is crude compared to most galactic civilizations, Dr. Park explained. We use brute force methods that the Devourers aren't adapted to counter. Our kinetic weapons and nuclear explosives are too simple for them to easily absorb and adapt. The ship shuddered again as more Devourers attacked. Through the communications link, they could hear the despair in Commander Zixthara's voice. Captain Morrison, you must flee while you still can. We are grateful for your attempt, but we will not have your deaths on our conscience. Ma'am, Morrison replied with a slight smile. You don't understand humans very well yet. We don't run from fights like this. Amy, patch me through to the entire alien fleet. Amy worked her controls and Morrison's voice was broadcast to all 12 Keltharian ships. People of the Keltharian fleet, this is Captain Morrison. My crew and I know you don't understand why we're here. You're right. We don't know you and we have no obligation to help you. But that's exactly why we're going to help you. He paused as another wave of Devourers attacked the Defiance. The human crew worked with practiced efficiency to fight them off, their weapons blazing in the dark of space. In human culture, we have a saying. Morrison continued. We judge a person not by how they treat their friends, but by how they treat strangers who can do nothing for them. You're strangers to us and you're in trouble. That's all we need to know. Through the communication link, they could hear thousands of alien voices responding in their musical language. Amy worked to translate the general meaning. Captain, they're singing. It's a song of gratitude and amazement. Commander Zixthara's voice came back, still filled with wonder. Captain Morrison, your species is unlike any we have encountered. But even with your courage, how can so few save so many? Morrison looked at his tactical display, studying the positions of the enemy forces and the damaged alien ships. A plan was forming in his mind. A typically human plan that was equal parts brilliant and insane. Commander, we're going to need your people to trust us completely, Morrison said. And we're going to show these Devourers something they've never seen before. Humans fighting for something bigger than themselves. As if summoned by his words, the largest Devourer ship began moving toward them, its biomechanical hull pulsing with malevolent intelligence. The real battle was about to begin. Captain Morrison gathered his senior staff in the briefing room while the Defiance continued its fighting retreat through the nebula. The ship's hull groaned under the stress of constant combat, but Tom Phillips had worked miracles to keep their weapons and shields operational. Here's the situation, Morrison began, pointing to a holographic display of the alien fleet. 12 Keltharian ships, each one infected with Devourers that are eating them from the inside. The aliens have maybe 6 hours before total hull failure. We need to get them out of this nebula and into clear space where they can make repairs. Dr. Park studied the tactical data. The problem is the Devourer blockade at the nebula exit. They've positioned their largest ships to prevent any escape. We'd have to punch through millions of those creatures. What about our experimental quantum drive? suggested Tom Phillips. We could overload it, create a massive explosion to clear a path. Ben Carter shook his head. That would destroy us too, Tom. And even if it worked, the aliens can't move fast enough to take advantage before more devourers fill the gap. Morrison was quiet for a moment, studying the display. Finally, he looked up with the expression his crew had learned to recognize. Their captain had an idea that was going to be dangerous and probably crazy. What if we don't just clear a path? Morrison said slowly. What if we create a running battle that draws most of the devourers away from the aliens? They seem focused on us now because we're the biggest threat. That's suicide, Captain, Ben said bluntly. We can't fight the entire swarm. We don't have to win, Morrison replied with a grim smile. We just have to keep them busy long enough for the Keltharians to escape. But we'll need to do more than just shoot at them from out here. Dr. Park caught on first. You want to board the infected alien ships? Exactly. We put teams inside their vessels to plant explosives and clear out the devourers that are eating them from within. Buy the aliens time to repair their ships while we lead the main enemy fleet on a chase through the nebula. The silence in the room was deafening. What Morrison was proposing was beyond dangerous. It was almost certainly a death sentence for everyone involved. Fighting inside alien ships against parasitic creatures in an environment none of them understood. Sir, said Marine Lieutenant Chris Evans, who had been quietly listening from the corner. My people are ready. But we don't know anything about alien ship layouts or how to fight these things in close quarters. We'll figure it out as we go, Morrison said with the confidence that had carried him through 15 years of deep space exploration. Humans are good at adapting. It's what we do. Commander Zixthara's voice crackled over the communication system. Captain Morrison, we have analyzed your ship's movements. You are drawing the devourers away from our vessels. This is a noble sacrifice, but unnecessary. We accept our fate. Morrison activated the comm system. Commander, we're not planning to die today. We're planning to save you, but we need your help. Can your people tell us the layout of your ships? We want to send boarding parties to clear out the devourers inside. The response came back filled with shock. You wish to enter our dying vessels? Captain, the devourers have created a toxic atmosphere inside our ships. Your people would be poisoned within minutes. Let us worry about that, Morrison replied. We humans are tougher than we look. Dr. Park was already working on the problem. I can modify our environmental suits to filter out most biological toxins. And I'm analyzing the devourer physiology. They're essentially biomechanical parasites. Our standard pulse rifles should be effective in close quarters. Tom Phillips looked up from his engineering station. I can rig some of our nuclear charges as time-delayed explosives. Plant them in the right spots and we can blow the devourers right off the alien hulls. Morrison nodded. Chris, pick your best people. Amy, coordinate with the aliens to get us docking information. Kate, I need you to plot an escape route through the nebula. Something crazy enough that the devourers won't expect it. Navigation Officer Kate Sullivan grinned despite the danger. I've got just the thing, Captain. There's a gravitational anomaly about 12 light minutes from here. If we time it right, we can use it like a slingshot to break out of the nebula. The radiation levels near that anomaly would kill us, Ben Carter pointed out. Not if we're moving fast enough, Kate countered, and the devourers would have to follow us through it. While the crew prepared for their desperate mission, Morrison opened a private channel to Commander Zixthara. Commander, I need you to understand something. What we're about to do goes against every tactical manual in human space. We're risking everything for people we just met. My superiors would probably court-martial me if they knew. Then why do you do this? The alien commander asked, her translated voice carrying genuine curiosity. Morrison thought for a moment. Because it's the right thing to do. Because in the grand scheme of the universe, we're all just trying to survive and take care of our families. Your people, my people. We're not so different. Your species is remarkable, Zixthara replied. We Keltharians value life above all else, but we have never encountered beings willing to risk everything for strangers. You fight like warriors, but your hearts are those of protectors. The conversation was interrupted by alarms as another wave of devourers attacked. The largest of the parasitic ships was moving directly toward the Defiance, its biomechanical hull pulsing with malevolent intelligence. This creature was different from the others, bigger, smarter, and clearly in command of the swarm. That's their leader, Dr. Park observed, studying the sensor readings. It's directing the other devourers like a hive mind. Morrison smiled coldly. Good. When we start our attack, that thing will come after us personally. That'll give the aliens their best chance to escape. Lieutenant Evans returned to the briefing room with his Marine squad, 12 of the toughest soldiers in human space, armed with modified weapons and environmental suits. Sergeant Nina Clark carried a bag of nuclear charges that could level a city block. "Marines are ready, sir," Evans reported. "We've studied the alien ship schematics as best we can. It's going to be like fighting in a living maze, but we'll adapt. Remember," Morrison told them, "you're not just fighting for the Keltharians. You're fighting for what humanity represents. You're showing the galaxy who we are when people need help." As the boarding parties prepared to launch, the Defiance continued its deadly dance with the Devourer swarm. The human ship was taking damage, but Tom Phillips and his engineering teams worked miracles to keep her fighting. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but they had something the Devourers didn't expect: the stubborn human refusal to give up. "All teams ready, Captain," Evans reported. Morrison looked around at his crew one last time. They were scared, but they were also determined. In a few minutes, they would either pull off the most audacious rescue in human history, or they would all die trying. "Launch boarding parties," Morrison ordered, "and may God help us all." The small human shuttles raced through the darkness toward the infected Keltharian ships. Lieutenant Chris Evans gripped his pulse rifle as his shuttle approached the nearest alien vessel. Through the viewport, he could see the Devourers attached to the crystal hull like massive metallic ticks, their drilling appendages boring deep into the living ship. 30 seconds to docking," announced the pilot. "Hull breach detected on the alien ship. We're going in through a Devourer entry point." Evans looked back at his 12 Marines. Sergeant Nina Clark was checking her explosive charges one final time. Corporal Mike Davis was adjusting his environmental suit's filtration system. They were about to enter an alien ship filled with hostile parasites and toxic atmosphere. In human military history, this ranked among the most dangerous missions ever attempted. "Remember, we're not just Marines today," Evans told his squad. "We're ambassadors. We're showing the galaxy what humans do when innocent people are in danger." The shuttle docked with a metallic clang that echoed through the hull. As soon as the airlock cycled, the Marines moved into the alien ship. The interior was unlike anything they had ever seen. Curved passages that pulsed with bioluminescent light, walls that seemed to breathe, and an atmosphere thick with spores that made their suits' filters work overtime. "Jesus," whispered Private Rachel Stone. "This place is alive." Evans activated his comm unit. "Captain, we're inside the first alien ship. It's like being inside a living creature. The Devourers have set up some kind of nest in the central chamber." Back on the Defiance, Captain Morrison was fighting his own battle. The massive Devourer leader had taken the bait and was pursuing the human ship with single-minded fury. The biomechanical creature was larger than a city block, its hull covered with weapons that fired living projectiles that tried to bore through the Defiance's shields. "Shields down to 30%, Tom Phillips reported, sweat dripping from his face as he rerouted power from damaged systems. "We can't take much more of this punishment." "Kate, how long until we reach the gravitational anomaly?" Morrison called out. Navigation Officer Kate Sullivan was fighting with her controls as another impact shook the bridge. 8 minutes, Captain. But we need to maintain this course exactly or we'll miss the slingshot window." Dr. Park looked up from her science station with concern. "Jake, the radiation levels near that anomaly are off the charts. Even with our shields, we'll only have minutes before lethal exposure." "Better than the alternative," Morrison replied grimly as another Devourer attack sent sparks flying from the ceiling. Inside the Keltharian ship, Evans and his Marines were discovering just how nasty the Devourers could be in close quarters. The parasites had created a maze of biomechanical passages throughout the ship, turning the beautiful crystal corridors into a nightmare of metal and flesh. "Contact front," shouted Corporal Davis as a group of Devourer drones emerged from the walls. The creatures moved like mechanical spiders, their razor-sharp limbs clicking against the crystal floor. The Marines opened fire with their pulse rifles. The energy beams tore through the biomechanical creatures, but more kept coming. For every Devourer they killed, 2 more seemed to take its place. "Nina, we need those charges placed in the central chamber," Evans called out over the sound of weapons fire. "How much further?" Sergeant Clark consulted her scanner. 200 meters, sir. But there's a massive concentration of Devourers between us and the target. The Marines fought their way through the infected ship, using tactics that no military academy had ever taught. They learned to use the ship's curved passages for cover, discovered that Devourer drones couldn't turn quickly in tight spaces, and found that the alien bioluminescent walls would flicker when the parasites were about to attack from hidden passages. Meanwhile, the other Marine teams were having similar experiences on different Keltharian ships. The humans were adapting to alien warfare faster than anyone had thought possible, but they were also taking casualties. 2 Marines had been killed when a Devourer ambush collapsed a section of ship corridor. On the Defiance bridge, Amy Rodriguez was coordinating with Commander Zix Ithara as the human ship continued its running battle with the Devourer leader. "Commander, our Marines are in position on 6 of your ships," Amy reported. "They've planted nuclear charges that should clear out most of the Devourers. But you need to evacuate those sections before detonation." "Our people are moving to safe areas," Zixthera replied. Her translated voice carried amazement. "Captain Morrison, your Marines are fighting inside our ships with incredible bravery. We have never seen such dedication to strangers." Morrison ducked as another Devourer projectile impacted near the bridge. "Commander, we need to start the evacuation sequence. In 5 minutes, we're going to detonate those charges and then make our run for the Nebula exit." "Understood. All Keltharian ships are preparing for emergency acceleration." The critical moment came when Evans and his squad finally reached the central chamber of the first alien ship. The room was enormous, filled with what looked like a cross between a garden and a cathedral. But the Devourers had turned it into a breeding nest, with hundreds of their larvae feeding on the ship's living systems. "My God," breathed Sergeant Clark. "They're using the ship to reproduce." Evans keyed his comm. "Captain, the Devourers aren't just trying to destroy these ships. They're converting them into breeding facilities. If we don't stop this, they'll have an unlimited supply of new warriors." "All the more reason to blow them to hell," Morrison replied. "Plant those charges and get out." Clark and her team worked quickly to place the nuclear devices while the rest of the Marines provided cover. The Devourers seemed to sense what was happening and launched desperate attacks to stop them. The fighting was vicious in close quarters, with humans and parasites locked in mortal combat throughout the ship. "Charges set," Clark reported. 2 minutes to detonation. "All Marine teams extract immediately," Evans ordered. "Move, move, move!" The Marines fought their way back to their shuttles as the Devourers tried to overwhelm them with sheer numbers. Several humans were wounded, but their training and determination carried them through. As the last shuttle cleared the alien ship, the nuclear charges detonated. The explosions lit up the nebula like miniature suns. 6 Keltharian ships were suddenly free of their parasitic infections, their crystal hulls glowing with renewed health. But the victory came at a cost. The massive Devourer leader had realized what was happening and was now racing toward the alien fleet, instead of chasing the Defiance. "Kate, we need that slingshot maneuver now," Morrison shouted. The Defiance dove toward the gravitational anomaly with the Devourer leader in close pursuit. The radiation levels spiked as they approached, and several crew members collapsed at their stations. But Tom Phillips managed to keep the engines running, and Kate Sullivan's navigation was perfect. At the last possible second, the Defiance used the anomaly's gravity to catapult itself toward the nebula exit at incredible speed. The Devourer leader, caught off guard by the maneuver, was pulled into the anomaly's radiation field. The massive creature's biomechanical systems failed under the intense energy bombardment. "It's working," Dr. Park shouted. "The radiation is disrupting their biological components." The Keltharian fleet, freed from their infections and following the human ship's lead, raced through the gap in the Devourer forces. It was a desperate flight through space that tested both species' courage and determination, but they were going to make it. Against all odds, the humans had saved them all. The combined fleet emerged from the void nebula into the clear space beyond like survivors crawling from a burning building. The Defiance was barely holding together, her hull scorched and breached in a dozen places. Several of the Keltharian ships were in similar condition, their crystal hulls cracked but no longer infected with the deadly parasites. Captain Morrison slumped in his command chair, exhaustion washing over him as the adrenaline of battle faded. Around the bridge, his crew was performing damage assessments and trying to keep their ship operational. They had done the impossible, but the cost had been severe. "Casualty report," Morrison requested quietly. Dr. Park looked up from her medical scanner with tired eyes. 14 crew members with radiation poisoning from our pass through the anomaly. 6 Marines wounded in the boarding actions. 2 confirmed killed in action. She paused. It could have been much worse, Jake. The captain nodded, feeling the weight of those losses. 2 good people had died to save strangers from across the galaxy. In human military tradition, there could be no greater honor, but that didn't make it hurt any less. Incoming transmission from the Keltharian flagship, Amy Rodriguez announced. Put it through, Morrison said, straightening in his chair. Commander Zixthara's image appeared on the main screen. The alien leader looked different now, stronger somehow, as if the experience had changed her. Her plant-like features carried a dignity that spoke of someone who had faced death and emerged transformed. Captain Morrison, she began, her translated voice carrying deep emotion. Words cannot express what your people have done for us. You saved not just our lives, but our entire civilization. The children, the genetic archives, the accumulated wisdom of millions of years. All of it survives because of human courage. Morrison shifted uncomfortably. He had never been good at accepting praise. We did what anyone would do, Commander. We helped people who needed help. No, Zixthara replied firmly. We have encountered many species in our travels across the galaxy. None would have risked what you risked for strangers. Your people are unique, Captain Morrison. You are warriors who fight not for conquest, but for protection. You are dangerous to enemies, but safe for friends. Tom Phillips looked up from his engineering console with a grin despite their damaged condition. Captain, the Keltharians are offering to share their biotechnology with us. Their medical systems could revolutionize human healthcare, and their ship-growing techniques could change everything about how we build spacecraft. And we would be honored to learn from human engineering, added Velmaran's voice over the comm. Your crude but effective methods have shown us new ways to solve old problems. Perhaps together, our 2 species can create something neither could achieve alone. Dr. Park was already examining the technical data being transmitted from the alien ships. This is incredible. Their biotechnology could eliminate most human diseases, and our manufacturing techniques could help them build ships that are both living and heavily armed. Over the next several hours, both fleets worked together to make repairs and tend to the wounded. Human engineers helped the Keltharians restore their damaged biosystems, while alien medical specialists treated the humans suffering from radiation exposure. It was the beginning of an exchange that would benefit both species for generations. Lieutenant Evans visited Morrison on the bridge, his arm in a sling from the boarding action. Captain, the Keltharians want to hold some kind of ceremony. Apparently they have rituals for honoring those who sacrifice for others. What kind of ceremony? Morrison asked. From what I understand, they want to sing for us. In their culture, it's the highest honor possible, having your deeds remembered in their songs. That evening, the crews of both fleets gathered in the largest Keltharian ship's central chamber. The room had been restored to its original beauty, a vast space filled with bioluminescent plants and crystalline formations that created natural acoustics. Thousands of aliens filled the chamber, their plant-like forms creating a garden of living beings. Commander Zixthara stood before them all, her voice carrying clearly in the musical tones of the Keltharian language. But this time, Amy's translator was working perfectly, converting the alien words into English for the humans present. Today we honor the warriors who came from the stars, she sang. They knew not our names, nor we theirs. They owed us nothing, yet they gave us everything. In the darkest hour, when death seemed certain, they chose to stand between us and oblivion. The entire Keltharian population joined in the song, their voices creating harmonies that seemed to make the very air shimmer. They sang of the small human ship that had dared to enter the deadly nebula. They sang of Marines who fought in alien corridors against impossible odds. They sang of a captain who chose to risk everything for strangers. Morrison found himself deeply moved by the ceremony. In human culture, heroes were usually honored with medals and ceremonies. But this was different. This was an entire civilization promising to remember their sacrifice for all time. After the ceremony, Zixthara approached Morrison privately. Captain, my people have decided to establish a permanent alliance with humanity. We wish to share our knowledge and learn from yours, but more than that, we want to stand with you when others need help. What do you mean? Morrison asked. There are other species in the galaxy facing threats like the Devourers, the alien commander explained. Pirates, slavers, parasites, beings who prey on the innocent. Your people have shown us that sometimes the strong must fight to protect the weak. We want to help you do that. Morrison smiled, understanding the implications. You're talking about forming some kind of galactic peacekeeping force. Exactly. Keltharian technology and human courage, working together to help those who cannot help themselves. What do you think? Before Morrison could answer, Amy Rodriguez approached with an urgent expression. Captain, we're receiving multiple transmissions from across this sector. Other alien species have heard about what happened here. They want to make contact with humanity. Dr. Park was reviewing the incoming messages on her portable scanner. Jake, this is bigger than we thought. Word of our rescue is spreading through their communication networks. Several species are requesting human assistance with their own problems. Morrison looked out at the stars beyond the chamber's crystal walls. When the Defiance had entered that nebula, they had just been an exploration ship on a routine mission. Now they were apparently humanity's first ambassadors to a galaxy that was just learning what humans were capable of. Commander Zixathera, Morrison said finally, I think our species are going to work very well together. 3 months later, the combined human-Keltharian fleet had grown to include ships from 6 different species. They had successfully driven off Devourer attacks on 2 other worlds and helped establish trade agreements between formerly hostile civilizations. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity had entered the cosmic stage not as conquerors, but as protectors. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the rebuilt Defiance, now enhanced with Keltharian biotechnology, and carrying crew members from multiple species. Tom Phillips had integrated alien medical systems that could heal injuries in minutes. Dr. Park was working with alien scientists to develop new technologies that combined the best of all their civilizations. Captain, Amy announced. We're receiving a distress call from the Kepler system. Unknown attackers are threatening a refugee convoy. Morrison smiled and settled into his command chair. The Defiance had found its purpose and humanity had found its place in the galaxy. Set course for Kepler system, he ordered. Maximum speed. As the ship turned toward its new mission, Morrison's final log entry reflected on what they had learned. Today we saved 1 species. Tomorrow we save them all, because that's what humans do. We help people who need help no matter who they are or where they come from. In a galaxy full of darkness, sometimes all you need is someone willing to light a candle. The stars ahead held new challenges, new friends, and new people who needed protection, and humanity would be there for all of them.